among the actors in the work in the kinds of ways we were just talking about before, about public innovators and boundary-spanning organizations, as opposed to just the issue part, which is also incredibly important, obviously, right? That's where they move the needle for people. So if you think of this group or some formation of this group as a steering committee, because I want to use the word core group for something else. In the core, so we've got 3 concentric circles, and you'll see movement in these over time. So in the core, our hope is, this goes to the boundary spanning organizations, we'd like to be able to identify with 4 or 5 groups in this core. They may sit on the steering committee or not. Some I suspect won't. Who are in this core, who are going to be the boundary spanning groups, who are going to be the real engines for making sure things are moving, for helping to keep things aligned over time in the community as things are moving, who can bring others on board because they're in the community every day, right? In many respects, these core groups become the face of a lot of the work. So they have to have a certain credibility, certain authenticity, they have to be willing to play ball in a certain kind of way. You have to be ruthless about who gets in the circle. Because the wrong 1 or 2 core groups will pull the entire thing down. Right? And we don't believe in giving anyone that much power. Because you can be held hostage too much. Right? Things can go south.
Can you amplify a little bit? I mean, in child welfare, we often say the advocates should not be the service providers because they have specific agendas. It should be people who are sort of at the core of the storm, in the middle of the hurricane, and not people who are out there in the fray. Can you amplify what you mean by those core boundary groups?
Yeah, so let me tell you who's going to mean the characteristics or the names?
Characteristics, attributes.
The attributes are that these groups are not there to take care of their own organizational agenda solely, right? So this is not a playing field for them to pursue their organizational agenda. Hopefully their organizational agenda matches what's going on. That's one of the reasons why they would be there. Second, they have to be interested in working across dividing lines in the community, which means many of us will be uncomfortable because we're gonna have to go to places we may not have been to yet, or the people we're working with have not been to yet. Third, they need to be able to let go, both hold on to sort of the reins of the initiative, but let go so that people in these other 2 circles can get work done. That takes a fair amount of leadership on their part. In Battle Creek, it's going to be the United Way. It's going to be Michigan State University, because they have a special role in there. It's going to be the Community Foundation, and it might be the newspaper. And there are probably going to be 1 or 2 others who would be in the core.
Right. I mean, DHOC has this idea of chaotic organization, which is ambiguity, right, which allows, if you will, the groups to self-merge. Is this the same kind of idea?
All the way through it is.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these things, we have, there are ways to screen for these groups when you're talking to them. Right. There's certain characteristics to look for, certain questions to ask. We have some tools you can use. We know when people go through the lab, they tend to self-select in or out pretty quickly. And people who thought they were self-selected before they come, often self-select out when they leave because they realize this is not what they want to do with their time, or there's too much ambiguity, or there's too much risk for them.
The 4 individuals you defined in Battle Creek makes sense. The 4th one was interesting, the newspaper. I'm assuming from a communication aspect, or was there dynamics in that city that's different?
There are some dynamics that are different, but even putting those aside, they're pretty similar to most other communities. Okay. Which is the media outlets in that community, this is true of Youngstown too, are becoming increasingly irrelevant. They don't know how to cover the community in ways that matter to the community. They don't really know how to get into the community to source good stories. And they don't know how to put together packages over time that enable the community to see itself and that don't advocate, they're not boosters of the community, but engage the community on tough issues. They don't know how to do it. Now, you're lucky you have KNPR, who I know pretty intimately, who actually has all those skills. I mean, they're in the, you know, they're a leader in public radio across the country. So as we get to this third thing, there's one of the things we're suggesting to people is actually forming a group of willing news media folks who are willing to work on the narrative of the community in an independent way.
Gotcha.
So that's where that's heading. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah. And a lot of them are interested because they see it as, for instance, I've talked to the folks at the paper, and they're really interested in it because they're trying to change their business model. Right. So, yeah. All right, does this make sense so far? So this is important. All right, then you've got what for now, well not for now, what we've been calling the pillars, right? And these are the 7, 8, 9, in my mind 2. Or at least it's starting saying, I'm going to say -5. But these are the pillars who are essentially the implementers, right? They're on the ground with their partners doing work. And so one of my key choices is how many pillars do we think we can handle out of the gate and is wise to start with, and there are different ways to cut that so that you can actually start with a couple but keep moving with the others so you're creating more of a narrative and ground cover for people. But I hate to use so many sort of military type terms, but to me actually this is a fight. This work is a fight in the end, so I don't think it's a process so much. So pillars become really important. The core group's relationship to the pillars is we would be working a lot with the core group, with our coaches and other folks, and I'll come back to that, but we'd be working less, also with our coaches with the pillars, but less in a way that we're trying to embed our work. With the core group, we're trying to embed our work in those core group organizations because they're going to be the homes for it over time. And that's worked really well in different communities. There's got to be someone who really is the home for it. And you want more than, you want a handful of groups. The pillars, our coaches would probably help more with their strategies, like implementing their strategies, staying aligned to some of the basic things we're trying to embed in the community in terms of norms and practices. The core group itself would be responsible for working with the pillars to make sure they're aligned to what you all said you're doing. Because we think that's much better coming from the community than from someone else. Make sense so far?
Especially that last sentence, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's got to come from inside. As you know, there are all sorts of models out there for collective action that are basically parachuting people in from outside to be the local staff person. And my sense of that is that strikes me as, well, what are we really changing other than we're implementing a good project? So anyway, so the last one, you know, so this is not unlike like a diffusion of innovation model. Right? The last one is sort of spreaders and connectors. And here, the way we've been thinking about this, who are the natural groups that would, that on their own would spread this work and try to build the capacity and the norms of the community and the narrative. So they may not be implementing a program from the pillars, right? And the pillars would have their own partners. But in Battle Creek, this is a group of African American men who started their own leadership program, ultimately with the support of Kellogg. They're embedded in the community like no one else will be in Battle Creek. They're interested in becoming, sort of taking on our work, adopting it, and using it wherever they go. Right? Similarly, Cass, to your point, the news media, willing partners in the news media might form a group that we might work with gently and say, hey, you can start thinking about narratives differently, or how you cover issues here. In Battle Creek, there's a group of funders that are in this, that are obviously related to all this, but they're funding lots of stuff in the community. And so we're going to work with them as a little group just to help them sort of turn, what we would say, turn outward and start to think about the community differently so they can start applying it wherever they are and in meetings together where they start talking about change making in the community. So the list is, I mean, the list could go on. Arts groups in some communities. In Battle Creek, the arts groups will be here. In Flint, Michigan, the arts group was one of the key core. They